I don't see it on our webpage.
Yes, it's rolling, so it's doing this rolling. And
Okay, I see it's live. Yeah, it started. Cosa. It seems that we started. I just tried to check connection.
Ludmila,
yes.
Just a parenthesis. We started. I'm just letting Brando's team share on his page. So just a second. That's why.
Okay. Okay. I just want also to share it on my web page. Checking if it's going. It's going. Just a few minutes and we will start. I'm waiting for final preparation of our technicians. Здравствуйте, вы слышите сейчас наш голос? И сейчас начнется трансляция. Я тоже на всякий случай на русском дублирую. Подтвердите, пожалуйста, в чате, если можно, те, кто нас смотрит на Фейсбуке. Окей, я слышу, что слышно.
Okay, now Brando's team is taking care of sharing, but if you want, we can already start. Is it okay?
Yes, it's okay.
Okay, I'll start on by...
Hello to everyone. It's our first webinar, sorry, a little bit worrying, and also try to put all connections in a good way. So please confirm that you can see us.
Yes.
And hear us.
Yes.
Hey everyone.
Hello.
Hello.
I'm waiting for some comments from Facebook, so everyone confirms. So our discussion is going to be in English, yeah, because we want to inform international community about the situation in Kazakhstan. Да, наша дискуссия будет на русском, на английском, потому что наша задача прежде всего проинформировать международное сообщество. Но пишите, пожалуйста, свои комментарии, вопросы. Мы собираемся покрыть очень много тем и будем рады потом включить ваши вопросы в дискуссию. So I just briefly introduce situation to our viewers from Facebook. I see that they are joining for the moment, and I propose to start. So I also check. Yes, everything is working now properly. Finally, well done. Thank you for technicians to help us. And I'm happy to start our first webinar about the very important topic, upholding human rights in Kazakhstan in times of COVID-19. And I'm really appreciate that Роберто Рампи, as a member of Parliament Assembly of Council of Europe, who was in Kazakhstan, who is monitoring the situation constantly in Kazakhstan and many other countries, but also who experienced himself, as many of us, unfortunately, what has been pandemic COVID-19 in every country, would listen to civil society voice, first-hand information. Also, we would later greet Роберто Рампи, Brandо Benife, a member of European Parliament, who also monitors situation in many countries, and especially now would be focused and listening the stories of civil society from Kazakhstan. I would like immediately to give the floor to opening remarks to Роберто to say hello to our speakers, and then we will pass the floor to civil society and human rights defenders.
Yes, thank you very much, because I believe in that strange period, also the webinar and everything like this is an instrument and a way to continue our work and our capability to hear people. And I believe it's very, very important. I thanks a lot Open Dialogue for that, because for many years, we understand and we are able to do something for many people around the world, a prisoner or people who fight for their rights and for the rights of every one of us, because we have something like Open Dialogue that is able to stay in touch with people on the field, with people in the country, all around the world, and to stay in touch with them. And so let us understand exactly what is happening and what is happening to people. And I believe we all fight for human rights all around the world. We really believe we have to do more and more to have human rights all around the world, but to understand exactly what is happening and how our work is working, we need to stay in touch with people. So thank you very much. I believe it's very important, and it's important also today to understand, to hear people, to hear civil society, and to understand from civil society what we can do and what we succeed in and what we have to change to have more results.
Thank you, Роберто. And now I would like to give the floor to a prominent human rights defender. Before she had a medical education. So, Dana Жанай, please, floor is yours. And my first question: Kazakhstan has one of the largest borders with China. When were the first reports of COVID infected in Kazakhstan? Did the model of China's behavior in hiding the numbers of infected serve an example for Kazakhstani authorities? Please, floor is yours.
Thank you, Ludmila. I want to say just right away that until the moment I became a human rights defender, as you said, my profession was a dentist. Therefore, I express solidarity with everyone, a medical professional who actually fights with his or her bare hands for the lives of our citizens. In Kazakhstan, the fight against infections was not led by medical doctors, but the National Security Committee and the law enforcement agencies. Following the example of China, the Kazakhstani authorities resorted to a censorship of information concerning the spread of infections and problems in combating it. The first reports of coronavirus infections in Kazakhstan appeared at the end of January 2020. They were reported by medical professionals and pharmacies. This was immediately followed by the reaction of law enforcement agencies who labeled this information false and began to persecute medical doctors. These persecutions has become another confirmation that Kazakhstan tried to conceal information about patients infected with coronavirus. And now I will mention 2 cases out of dozens reported cases. First, it was on 29th of January 2020. It was in Aktobe in the west of Kazakhstan. The pharmacist reported on the social networks that 3 Chinese citizens with coronavirus were identified in the city. Reportedly, they were held in a residential building and were not taken to a hospital. The pharmacist was detained, and after interrogation, she repented. She was accused of disseminating knowingly false information. And the second case, it was on 30th of January 2020, when Kazakhstani medical doctor, Duman Ayjanov, his name, warned his friends about dozens of detected cases of coronavirus infection in Almaty. Thus, the authorities severely persecuted those who at the end of January spoke about the appearance of coronavirus from neighboring China, with which Kazakhstan has a long border and close ties. At the same time, against the background of these reports between 29th of January 2020 and the 3rd of February 2020, Kazakhstan suspended bus, rail, and air connection with China. Thus, it was confirmed that at the time, infections in Kazakhstan could indeed have been identified. However, they were concealed. In addition, for example, on 1st of February 2020, the president of Kazakhstan, Tokayev, announced the government's decision to provide China with humanitarian assistance to fight the coronavirus. And at the same time, inside Kazakhstan, the authorities failed to properly prepare for the epidemic. Medical workers, just like other citizens, were not provided with personal protective equipment. Doctors stayed in medical institutions around the clock and worked overtime. All this caused a large number of infected doctors. At the same time, neither the government nor the president of Kazakhstan, Tokayev, provide regular and confirmed data on this issue. And according to official information, in early April 2020, there were 211 infected doctors. It's about 21% of all cases. And already in June 2020, the Minister of Health announced about 1,904 infected doctors. It's about 12% of all infected. And at the same time, the authorities did not officially recognize the presence of coronavirus in the country until 13th of March 2020. Let us not forget that on 11th of March 2020, the World Health Organization announced the pandemic. And 2 days later, the Minister of Health of Kazakhstan, Yejan Berdanov, announced the import of coronavirus into the country, namely the first infected person who arrived from Germany.
Germany?
Yes. And later, Kazakhstan state propaganda emphasized that the first patients arrived from European countries, including Italy. Yeah.
Okay. Sounds similar to the whole propaganda repeated also by Russian propaganda media or others in many countries. So Tokayev government reported $1 billion funding from the state budget, including for payments for doctors. What support was provided to medical professionals, if you followed, of course, for this issue?
Authorities have announced that they would pay bonuses to medical doctors who are involved in anti-epidemic measures. However, it transpired that the bonuses were provided only to those who work directly with infected patients. This approach seems to be discrediting and irrational because if someone from the work team has contact with infected persons, then other members of the team are also at risk. At the same time, a case was recorded when the bonuses were not received even by those who had direct contact with infected people.
Maybe you can propose some example of this kind of situation. I mean, do you have concrete example of hospitals where it happened?
Yes. So, for example, doctors who did not receive bonuses held protests in several cities of Kazakhstan. It is, for example, employees of the Mangistau Regional Hospital stated that the leadership began to threaten them with dismissal after they complained about their problems in a video message to the president, Tokayev. In particular, the medical doctors reported that they had received only part of the salary and they had been given sour milk as compensation. Sour milk, even more sour milk as compensation for their round-the-clock work. Also, one of them, it's Siligan Mukhambetov, was threatened with criminal prosecution.
Okay, so how much did the public in Kazakhstan become aware on danger of COVID-19 after a pandemic was declared at World Health Organization? How did the state keep records on those infected and killed by COVID-19? And what has it led to so far?
On 15th of March 2020, a state of emergency was introduced throughout Kazakhstan, which was in force until 11th of May 2020. As in other Australian states, officially Kazakhstan has a very low mortality rate from coronavirus infection. It's approximately 0.4% of as of early July 2020, which may indicate the manipulation of statistics. In order to decrease the number of infected people since June 2020, authorities have ceased to include in the statistics those who have an asymptomatic disease. It was also reported that patients with pneumonia are not included in the statistics of coronavirus incidents. Since the beginning of June 2020, Kazakhstan has seen a significant increase in the incidence of pneumonia, up to 2,500 cases per day. And however, the test for coronavirus in patients with pneumonia is supposedly negative. And on July 17, 2020, after public pressure, authorities said that they would combine statistics on coronavirus and pneumonia only from 1st of August. In fact, this is another reason for manipulation. We received reports that an average of 15 people are buried in Aktau for pneumonia per day. This is just one funeral agency. And in Shymkent and Almaty, more than 200 people are buried per day. And official statistics say that we have only slightly more than 500 dead since March 2020. Cases were recorded when law enforcement agencies threatened relatives of coronavirus victims with criminal liability if they disclose details of their deaths. In addition, journalists found that in Almaty, the number of graves in places designed for burial of victims of infections was 3 times higher than official mortality data. Kazakhstan ranked 4th globally as regards number of PCR tests per 100,000 people. However, the detection rate of infection are several times lower than in other countries. On 29th of June 2020, Tokayev, president of Kazakhstan, acknowledged that the test systems used by Kazakhstan and PCR studies may be of poor quality.
If you allow me, I would like to ask our colleagues to put a short video. It's around 30 seconds, but I think it would show the reality where Kazakhstan is now with coronavirus.
Yeah.
So we see the city Aktau. Now we see the airport of Shymkent. There is some short videos where people standing on the streets without transport. This is aligned to X-ray analysis in October. Across the country, medical literally treats and with the bare hands without any medications. And here you have short video which shows how authorities put medicines just on a side of the road, to make a medical salute. We call it as a medical salute to the human defenders because, unfortunately, instead of support medicines, authorities of Kazakhstan, they try to use this kind of, I would say, flash mob just to boost their propaganda, trying to show that they are supported by medical workers and that they are support medical workers. But as Dana, you said, this is a sad reality. Short, very a few seconds video show the situation in the country. So sorry to interrupt you.
Mm-hmm. Now, on this video, we see how the situation got out of control in Kazakhstan. Authorities decided to reintroduce strict quarantine measures throughout the country from 5th of July 2020. Just recently, it was prolonged till August. At the same time, there are rumors that strict quarantine measures will be till January 2021. China's experience has proven that the concealment of relevant information about coronavirus and untimely response may lead to even more serious consequences. As a result, the virus has spread throughout the world and reached the scale of a pandemic.
And what you would say, because just today and before also on 17th of July, the head of Ministry of Health, Alexei Tsoi, delivered a statement on coronavirus saying that pandemic situation is getting better, and it was confirmed by Dr. Dorit Nitsan, Regional Director of Emergencies of the World Health Organization European Office also, and Dr. Hans Kluge, Director of the WHO Regional Office for Europe. And I quote, Dorit Nitsan, 1/3 of infections have been reported in the last 2 weeks, with epidemiological conditions stabilizing and decreasing. She noted that the Republic authorities are not only developing a number of new sanitary measures, but are also improving testing and treatment methods, as well as monitoring the population's compliance with the basic requirements for wearing masks, social distancing, and limiting group gatherings of people. How it's possible that you, as human rights defenders, on behalf of medical workers, on behalf of patients, civil society, report an increase in infections and death, while WHO frankly praises the authorities and says otherwise?
Unfortunately, the representatives of World Health Organization do not meet with civil society of Kazakhstan or don't reply to our requests. For them, only the opinion of the authorities is considered, besides the fact that we are citizens of Kazakhstan, pay at least $4 million for their offices in Almaty and Astana from our taxes every year. They are therefore frankly exposed to propaganda and further spread it. Yes.
I see. Thank you very much for your testimonies. Now I would like to switch on Айгуль Павел, prominent human rights defender from Kazakhstan, and I would like to ask you, Айгуль, about the political persecution during pandemic. So we have information that during the state of emergency in Kazakhstan, more than 16,000 people were detained for violating the state of emergency, of which more than 12,000 people were brought to administrative responsibility. In the first months of state of emergency alone, more than 1,500 people were arrested. What's condition in detention facilities in Kazakhstan? What have these actions led to? Have the police themselves been equipped with the protective gloves and masks? So if you can provide this information, please.
Mm-hmm. Thank you, Ludmila. Repressive actions by the government of Kazakhstan have resulted in an even greater number of infections. Meaningless detentions and the harassment put of 16,000 Kazakhs and their lives at unreasonable risk. The detainees were held in small and overcrowded cells, which is a direct violation of quarantine measures. In most cases, arrests could have been replaced with fines or warnings, and in many cases, the court sentences were illegal and politically motivated. It should be noted that in many regions, police officers often did not wear masks and gloves. The police leadership forced them to buy scarce remedies for themselves. Only after the public disclosure of these cases were the police provided with masks.
Okay, I see. Could you please elaborate on how much you can say that political persecution increased during this state of emergency?
For human rights defenders and civic activists, the beginning of the COVID-19 pandemic begins at the end of January 2020, when medical professionals from different cities were persecuted for spreading information about the growth of infected by coronavirus. The state of emergency and the quarantine provided the authorities of Kazakhstan with additional tools enabling political persecution. The most brutal cases of persecution are the murders of 3 activists. Dulat Agadil, who was found dead the night after his arrest on February 25, 2020. It was videotaped by activists that Dulat's body was covered in scars and bruises. The authorities are hiding and preventing relatives from giving their lawyer a video of Dulat's last hours of life, which shows him dying without assistance in a cell. The policeman stepped over him and let him die. Amanbike Mirhanova, who was found dead on March 28, 2020 by police officers under unclear circumstances after several threats and abductions by national security officers. Seri Kurazov, who was brought to this on May 15, 2020, using strangulation techniques on police officers. Besides that, activists were massively subject to arbitrary arrests and fines for criticizing the authorities on social networks, including for their assessment of the effectiveness of measures to combat coronavirus. More than 177,000 of activists in Kazakhstan are at risk to be criminally persecuted for their peaceful online social activity.
Thank you very much. I just want to add that the case of Dulat Agadil happened just on the very first day of mission of the members of European Parliament in Kazakhstan, when they were there to monitor implementation of the recommendations and also enhanced partnership and cooperation agreement. Until now, as you said, unfortunately, investigation basically nowhere. Authorities deny the fact that Dulat Agadil was tortured, and they prosecute people who actually did this video, fixing the signs of torture on the body of Dulat Agadil. So, of course, our main demand is to have proper investigation, to bring to justice and stop impunity of those who are responsible for political murders, all of these 3 activists. So, but my question, on what platform of social network did citizens of Kazakhstan most often communicate or exchange information after the state of emergency has introduced in Kazakhstan? Because as far as I know, most of citizens followed recommendation of the authorities to stay at home until the very end, when they were left without sources for life. And what did activists and human rights defenders do at that time? Why they were prosecuted, fined, closed, and with a an administrative arrests.
During the state of emergency, most of information in Kazakhstan was discussed and shared in the Telegram chat created by the peaceful oppositional movement Koshi Partisi. The second biggest...
What does it mean, Koshi Partisi? It's street party, right?
Street party, yeah. The second biggest chat is Democratic Choice of Kazakhstan, oppositional movement. A part of Telegram chats, Kazakhstani citizens are using YouTube, Instagram, and Facebook. But most effective and interactive is Telegram chats. It became a place where activists, human rights defenders, and ordinary citizens peacefully discussed social and political issues. For this reason, authorities massively persecuted activists of the peaceful opposition movement Koshi Partisi and participants in the Telegram chat of this movement. Activists sharply criticized the government's actions aimed at concealing the real extent and the consequences of the pandemic in Kazakhstan. Koshi Partisi was established in various cities of Kazakhstan in February 2020. As of the 19th of May 2020, there were 177,456 people registered in the chat. Authorities just were afraid such huge movement. So on the 19th of May 2020, the court, at the request of the General Prosecutor's Office, secretly recognized Koshi Partisi as an extremist organization and banned its activities in Kazakhstan.
I want to repeat it. Secretly recognized 177,000 people as an extremist, without any questioning, without anything, right?
Right. You are right.
And what then?
Next. Sorry, excuse me, Ludmila.
And what then? So the court, what did the court, did the activists try to appeal?
The court denied the activists' right of appeal, stating that they were allegedly not a party to the case. Also, these very activists were persecuted by National Security Committee and the Minister of Interior Affairs, activists for their participation in the Koshi Partisi movement. We have collected data on more than 200 activists who were arbitrarily detained and illegally interrogated from 19th of May 2020 until the end of June in connection with their support of the Koshi Partisi manifesto and the participation in peaceful rallies.
Thank you, but this reminds me exactly the way that in March 2018, the authorities labeled the opposition movement, the Democratic Choice of Kazakhstan, an extremist organization. At that time, there were more than 100,000 members in DCK Telegram chat, and the day afterward, all were banned. And the European Parliament has recognized the Democratic Choice of Kazakhstan as a peaceful movement. Many organizations also analyzed that, especially UN, that Kazakhstani authorities abuse extremist charges to prosecute and silence oppositioners. So Since March of 2018, authorities of Kazakhstan have arbitrarily detained more than 7,000 peaceful protesters. This is what we, as Open Dialogue Foundation, in cooperation with human rights defenders in Kazakhstan, recorded. Because basically it was done on a basis of secret court decision banning the DCKs. So what is the reaction of people to that repression policies of the authorities?
Yes, you are right. In case of Kushi parties, it was applied the same model as in DCK case. Following the end of the emergency regime and the weakening of quarantine on the 6th of June 2020, mass peaceful rallies were held in 14 cities.
Wow. 14 cities.
14 cities of Kazakhstan, with demands for better social guarantees against the backdrop of the coronavirus pandemic. Law enforcement authorities brutally detained several hundred peaceful protesters, and some of them, Kanchai Shirmahambetova, Diana Muhametova, Asya Tulesova, Maksat Bigaliyev, faced criminal charges. To conclude, the government of Kazakhstan abuses the quarantine regime and the state of emergency in order to silence opponents and prevent peaceful assemblies. It has nothing with protection of the health of Kazakhstani citizens. All that was happening in parallel with adoption of the new oppressive law on peaceful assembly. You know, in the midst of pandemic, parliaments and governments of democracies took urgent measures to strengthen the healthcare system and save the economy. In Kazakhstan, while in a state of emergency, authorities prepared a draft, voted, and finally approved the law by parliament and the President Tokayev. They openly neglecting all the recommendations of the international community. The UN bodies, the OSCE, members of the European Parliament, the US State Department, international associations of lawyers and human rights organizations have repeatedly emphasized that the law proposed by the authorities fundamentally does not meet international standards, unduly restricts the right to peaceful assembly, and fundamentally contradicts Kazakhstan's international obligations.
Thank you, Aigul, very much. And now I would like to give the floor to Bota Джардемали. So you can say to us more details about financial and governmental programs. Are you with us? Maybe we need a little bit to wait until the moment we switch on.
I
Perfect. Bota, nice to hear you.
Thank you for your presentation.
So the government of Kazakhstan claimed that they are continuing to struggle with the virus, and the country is currently going through the unprecedented spike, despite it was used billions of dollars to prevent the pandemic from spreading further. Are the resources going where they were supposed to go to, and what is the level of transparency of this money?
Thank you very much, Ludmila, Open Dialogue, for this opportunity to be able to speak about the really very extremely difficult, I would say, tragic situation that is happening in Kazakhstan right now. So as Dana mentioned already, we had quarantine from mid-March until middle of May, but then authorities had to impose quarantine again, just recently in the beginning of July. And this is so-called unprecedented spike in pneumonia. It's basically the government is trying to hide once again its complete failure to deal with the virus. So they have to use this word pneumonia, which became basically a euphemism for coronavirus, right? And the government is denying that is completely failed to fight this pandemic and this crisis that accompanied by economic crisis. I have to say for the kind of Western public, but because sometimes people have this perception that Kazakhstan is a developing country and it's probably too poor to fight the pandemic. But Kazakhstan is not a poor state. This is very important to remember. It's not poor by any economic indicators. It has small population. At the same time, it produces the amount of oil. It's an oil-producing country. The amount of oil that Kazakhstan produces, it's basically puts it among one of the top 10 oil producers in the world. And if to use the numbers, we can basically say that Kazakhstan produces over, I believe, 650 million barrels per year, which is basically, if you use it per capita, we produce more than Dubai, and 3 times more than Dubai. And it's very important to remember that in March of this year, by the time when we reached quarantine first time, Kazakhstan authorities claimed that the country had reserves in our oil fund with the National Bank, which was equal to 3 annual state budgets, or $90 billion.
90 billion.
This is something, this is just reserves, right? We are not talking about state budget, we are talking about the reserves that Kazakhstan held. And this is something is in US treasuries, in euros, in dollars, in gold, in AAA papers, etc., right? So some kind of liquid reserves, right, that they could sell at any point. But at the same time, I think Dana mentioned Mangistau, right? And that region, it's a extremely rich in oil region, oil producing region. And I'll give you an example. You worked on quite a bit on the town of Zhanaozen.
Yes.
Town of Zhanaozen, it's an oil producing town which had economic problems for the longest time, and where we had killing of workers on strike, right? And that Zhanaozen alone, it produces more than Dubai. And nevertheless, it has less than 10 ventilators, those breathing machines that you extremely need during the pandemic, for the whole city, less than 10 ventilators. So why?
How is possible?
Yeah, exactly. This is a question. And the answer is obvious. This is corruption, because the proceeds of the sales of oil, they don't go like really into building our health system, into building of our infrastructure. It goes into the pockets of Nazarbayev's family, Nazarbayev himself, and his immediate circle. And this is the result. What we see right now, how the government is dealing with pandemic, how the government dealing with quarantine, this is just everything is the consequences of this grand corruption and the failure of authoritarian regime to build proper institutions in the country and proper system, proper infrastructure. And I just want to mention something, which is we have now 2 members of the EU Parliament, and European Union just a few days ago in July, they launched Team Europe Solidarity Package. And this is a Central Asian Crisis Response Program, basically help for Central Asian countries to deal with the crisis. And that package has been in the amount of 3 million, and it's 3 million euros, and it's primarily focused on Kazakhstan. So Kazakhstan takes around 3 million from EU taxpayers to fight the corona, right? But, considering that we have 90 billion in the reserves in the country, right? How this money will be used? They will be squandered. They will be squandered and put in the pockets, used to create this wonderful, wonderful propaganda presentations, and that will be spent also to the trips to Europe to make those presentations to the EU officials, to demonstrate how wonderfully the country is dealing with quarantine. Another way to use it for propaganda purposes. And just to put it in the context and illustrate a little bit, on the 6th of July, just recently, just less than 2 weeks ago, we had a so-called Nur Sultan Day, Day of the Capital, right? And that's the day of the Nazarbayev, Nur Sultan Nazarbayev birthday. And according to some reports, Kazakhstan spent over 2.4, I believe, 2.4 million euros just to decorate the city of Nur Sultan, just for decoration, while doctors are dying at the hospitals or at home, while people complaining that there is no medication at the pharmacies, while people cannot get basic medical supplies such as just oxygen masks. So this is how, in Marie Antoinette style, Kazakhstan celebrates Nazarbayev's birthday. And you mentioned about this billions of dollars that Kazakhstan...
it said 13 billions, right?
Yeah, exactly. That President Tokayev stated that Kazakhstan spent 13 billion to support the population and the business affected during the quarantine, which is approximately 8%, it depends on your exchange rate, 8% of the Kazakhstan GDP. Tokayev said that it's unprecedented. It's not unprecedented, it's basically in pars with what is Western countries spent during the quarantine to support their economies. But what is important to say that 10 out of those 13 billion is spent in a completely non-transparent way. We actually, the way how they spend, I would say one thing, the economy and the population don't feel that this amount of money went into the economy. What happened is actually, in April of this year, so during the first quarantine, a list of companies was leaked, a list of companies that are recipients of that state aid, right? Recipients of those 10 billions.
And who was on the list?
And that's exactly the question. Who was on the list, right? And when you look at the list, there are only companies that are beneficially owned by members of Nazarbayev family, companies that only owned by inner circle of Nazarbayev clan, and that's it. So how this money were spent, we still don't know. They basically were again taken out of the state reserves into somebody's pockets. So there is no transparent and comprehensive reports, and there is no accountability whatsoever. And at the same time,
EU gives the next 3 million for something we don't know for what. How they are going to spend.
We kind of we can more or less understand where 3 billion went, but it's again like, for example, Kazakhstan gives this support package in the amount of approximately $90 to a certain percentage of the population, right? That, as they claimed, that was affected by the pandemic, but it's very little. And that happened only because of the pressure, social pressure that civil society put on the government, on the regime. And that pressure was created because of the work of Democratic Choice of Kazakhstan, because Democratic Choice of Kazakhstan from the beginning of the pandemic was explaining what kind of resources the country has, what country can do, and why it's extremely important from even just a pure economic perspective to support the economy, to being able to maintain the demand in the country from the economic point of view, while the government has to support the population, give the direct help to the population, and only because of that pressure the government provided, but as usually happens, it's too little too late, and it's really something that is not sufficient to really help people.
If you allow me, Botta, I would like to give short intervention for Brandon Benife, member of European Parliament, because we discussed the issue of money. And we have this experience when, for example, in Moldova, the money disappeared, and more than $1 billion of dollars disappeared in 3 days. Here we have 3 months. What kind of instruments members of European Parliament have to put conditions to monitor, to be sure that this money used properly, and actually to support civil society, support Kazakh citizens in their fight for their lives during this hard time, but also to have transparency, because $13 billion from national budget is a huge amount. I don't know, it can't be let like that. So Brando, floor is yours. I know that you have little time, but maybe you can give your overview, what you heard, and some comments. Thank you.
Yes, today, as you know, it's a very special day. In the end, it's finally the day of the agreement between the European governments for the recovery plan. So we are very, very tight on time. We are preparing the extraordinary plenary of the Parliament of Thursday. And so I am really, really tight on time, but I wanted to be here anyway, because I appreciate very much the work that Open Dialogue Foundation is doing, and the work that my colleague that is here, Roberto Rampi, has been doing from the Council of Europe perspective. And I've been involved with you on the rights of human rights defenders, their conditions, and the conditions of political movements like the ones we are talking about today in the context of Kazakhstan of today. It's very important that the European Union doesn't make errors similar to the past of not being able to control effectively what has been happening with money delivered for specific projects. I have to tell you that I've been in the position, for example, to work very closely on the way that Turkey has been spending money on some projects, and the Parliament was able to push the Commission to do the right things, to monitor and control and stop the misuse of funds being used sometimes for repressive measures in a way that was completely out of scope for what has been put in place for cooperation. We know, and in fact, we wanted to do a visit before the COVID-19 crisis has exploded. We know that there is a sensitiveness with the Kazakhstan authorities to the image and the relation that they have with the European Union. And so that's why we must be tough. We must be clear that we cannot continue, and the Parliament has expressed itself also very clearly recently, you know, and you also mentioned it earlier, that we cannot work without having a better environment for free press, free association. If we want to have a deeper relation, we want some rights and democratic guarantees to be in place. Today, we know that we are also still in a moment where we think that we can, for various reasons, influence in a positive way, the way that the Kazakhstan authorities act. And so I think that we must keep a strong pressure, And we must not lose sight, as we are into this deep trouble as Europeans, to find solutions for the recovery of our continent, that we are doing that in these hours, that we do not forget to keep a high standard for any kind of cooperation that we do with some countries, especially those, I want to be very frank and realistic, especially those like Kazakhstan are not superpowers. And so we have a larger possibility to influence than countries that are less affected by decisions that we might take on our bilateral relations for trade, for economy, etc. We can do it in this case. We can do it more effectively than with other countries. So we must go on with that. When now we will look into the MFF, the new multi-annual financial framework, our negotiations also from the Parliament side, we need to keep this very high and clear in the work that we do in terms of how also the cooperation and the money being put in it with the larger neighborhood of Europe is being spent, and also so with Central Asia and with Kazakhstan, because we need to push in the right direction so that things can change. And I really want to thank all the work that you have been doing in these years, the work that we have done together, and let's go on in this direction, and let's not make errors like there were in the past, errors that are linked to short-termism in the minds of the governments. The European Parliament, first of all, and the Commission, if it takes the right attitude, can look at the medium-term interest.
Exactly.
That is toward the one of keeping a high standard in the relations with countries like Kazakhstan, not to concede on our values. Thank you very much, and
thank you so much.
Thank you, Brandon.
Thank you so much.
Your words is music to my ears, really.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, and good luck with your budget. So, Botta, let me continue, please. I would like to ask you, what countries and on which scale humanitarian aid was provided to Kazakhstan anyway, a part of these billions of dollars which were invested from national budget, and how they were used, if you know, of course.
Yeah, I probably don't know such details how the aid was used, right? I know that there are 12 countries, at least 12 countries that provided humanitarian aid to Kazakhstan, right? And this is US, China, Japan, Turkey, South Korea, etc., right? And the aid was different, right? From the computers for laptops for now for distant learning for the kids, right? That was actually provided by Open Dialogue's home country Poland, or former home country Poland, right? To a lot of just medical supplies and some financial aid, right? But what is important to remember, this is an embarrassment for our country to be in a position when we have to receive humanitarian aid in this situation, because we had time to prepare during so-called first quarantine, right, to prepare enough for everything what happens, because everyone expected the second wave. But in our case, the second wave is actually happened. It was delayed first wave, right? That is happening right now and happening extremely dramatically. And I think Dana provided us with some numbers. And if you even looking at these statistics, you understand how dire the situation is in Kazakhstan. And I want to say, just to illustrate again, just to put things into perspective, when Kazakhstan receives financial aid from another countries, receives something like 3 million, like some laptops, etc. At the same time, on the other hand, the regime increases the budget for the National Security Committee, which is a former KGB, right? It's basically secret police that exists only to prosecute the dissent, only to really go after the opposition, go after the girls that we just listened to, our human rights defenders, going after people like me, right? Yeah. And
if you allow me, I want to remind that during the last months we had the prosecution of Anna Shukeyeva, Yelena Semyonova, Dana Janai, Altinay Tuksikova. This is like the most prominent human rights defenders in Kazakhstan, in different cities, and they were highlighting and basically informing civil society and society in general about tortures, about prison conditions, and the threat that COVID-19 can spread far from these detention facilities, and a lot of people can die. And unfortunately, what happened with them? They were threatened. Some of them were summoned. Some of them has, like Yelena Semyonova, already 8 civic and criminal cases. And the main demand is to silence, of course, from the side of the government, to silence these human rights defenders, and it's absolutely unacceptable.
Yeah, and in parallel, it's just, this is what's happening in Kazakhstan, and members of the opposition abroad, they experience as well. They increased pressure, because this is, for example, right now, what I personally experiencing is a wave of derogatory false articles, so full of fake news, and this is like on unknown websites, right? And this is what we kind of people like me who have already experienced dealing with this type of state propaganda, with the black PR, we basically say, oh, they receive the budgets, so the budgets to fight us, people who are members of the opposition and going for the regime change in the country.
But it's not only about propaganda, it's also about misuse of mutual legal assistance, which is also a costly procedure. And they basically go for member of opposition, family members, threats around the world, which is extremely costly. Absolutely. And this is also the budget of National Security Committee.
This is happening all the time. So you know, it's the time of crisis when people don't have basic masks, but basic paracetamol. The government increases the budget by 100 million, the budget of the state security, or what they say, like National Security Committee, right? And the threat of national security is actually in Nur-Sultan. This is something that we all have to admit. This is the greedy, corrupt, authoritarian regime. This is the biggest threat of national security, and not those activists that Brandо, Aigul mentioned, those activists that want to have free press, independent judiciary, free elections, and normal democratic institution. And this is what we're all fighting for.
Okay, so how you can comment the reaction of World Health Organization or members of European Parliament on the praising situation with fighting coronavirus in Kazakhstan? I know.
Yeah, it's actually very sad, because this type of statements, it's praising how Nazarbayev's regime is successfully dealing with pandemic, and they want to use Kazakhstan as an shining example for other countries how to deal with
one step ahead of the pandemic. This is a quote of the head of delegation of the European Parliament in Central Asia, Fulvio Martuscello,
which was exactly right.
Yes.
This is a very good quote, and I believe that he also, as far as I recall, he also praised Kazakhstan's non-existence biotech sector, which is a total embarrassment for the member of the European Parliament and the head of delegation of the EU Parliament to do so. It's really, it's been said a lot about the behavior of the World Health Organization, right? That again, quote Kazakhstan, that is a great example of proactive proactive actions that stabilize the situation with COVID. And we right now see again that situation not only hasn't been stabilized, it's actually extremely dangerous right now in the country. And the way how it was handled is so badly that it gives a rise to a number of conspiracy theories among people, because people say that the government intentionally poisons them. Because it's like, for a lot of people, it's hard to believe that that level of incompetence that the government is dealing with the crisis right now. And one thing I want to say, it's really what Brandon said. It's extremely important, and I want to say that it's the time of internet. It's the time when we all sitting in those Telegram chats. It's the time when we have a number of activists that speak English, that speak other languages, that when embassies, EU institutions, Western institutions can directly communicate with the members of the civil society. We are not behind iron curtain anymore. It's embarrassing to have those, pardon my English, right? It's useful idiots that keep praising dictatorial regimes. It's really, those times should pass. Mm-hmm. Because information like that is verifiable. And yeah, I'm sorry, you want to...
No, I just wanted to have short recommendations, because I want to give the floor to Roberto to conclude and to say, also, we heard the voice of the member of the European Parliament, but we have the voice of Italian Parliament and also member of Parliament Assembly of Council of Europe, which is extremely important institution for human rights. So we want to think what we can do together. So I want to give you floor, but first your recommendation.
I'll have a quick message, right? Thank you for this opportunity. I want to say one thing. Then, hi Roberto. After COVID crisis will pass, Kazakhstan, with this low oil prices, with the current situation, with the way how the government handle everything, Kazakhstan's economy faces serious long-term crisis. And we as a society, as the civil society, as the members of the opposition, we are afraid that we will be left there alone, and they will be, who they will be to rescue? China will be there to rescue us with their cheap loans, right? And only, this is something that we very much want to resist, because we understand the long-term consequences for our country and even in existence of Kazakh nation. And we want to say that only our growing opposition, only vibrant, active civil society can really stop the current regime, current corrupt authoritarian regime from selling our country to China. But we obviously need help from the West. We obviously need help from the Western institutions. And I want to say one thing, that we are not asking for money. We are asking, we as civil society, we are asking for political help. We really want the EU, the West, to demonstrate that you are not willing to buy this propaganda that is provided, that fed to you by our regime. You know, to show that Western democracies are actually willing to go after human rights violators, against those who participate in grand corruption. And Roberto is actually a great promoter of the personal sanctions in the
global
EU, specifically in Italy, right? And again, we come into the Magnitsky Act. We don't want a country to be punished for human rights violation. We want those specific violators, those who just recently stole $10 billion from under our eyes. We want them to pay, and to pay in terms of that they won't be able to hide those funds. They won't be able to travel and enjoy Europe and enjoy Tuscany and enjoy Côte d'Azur, etc., right? And take advantage of the Western medical systems. at the time when our medical system is completely in shambles. And so I'm asking again, like I had those conversations with the members of EU parliaments many times. We are asking again that any aid, any contract with country like Kazakhstan should be always conditional on the fulfillment of its human rights obligations. And this is something that economy first, it doesn't work anymore. We see it now, it doesn't work.
Yeah, thank you very much, Botta. Roberto, you heard a lot. So we would like now to hear you, what we can do, what we can try to bring these messages for Parliament, Assembly of Council of Europe, because you noted that now the time when parliamentarians and governmental meets, but civil society completely not. The voice of civil society completely disappeared from international platforms. And I'm really grateful for you that you and Brando listen to us and make possible this webinar. And I hope we are going to meet with you and other colleagues more often. Yes.
First of all, I believe that the point of pandemic situation is a very, very interesting point for all human rights all around the world. Also in a stronger country from the side of human rights, we know that that situation, that is an useful situation, is giving problem with human rights, because you know that the need that we all have to control more people can be used to have less right for people. And
exactly.
That's a problem. That's a general problem in Italy, in the USA, and in UK, or everywhere. So we all know that in a country like Kazakhstan, in which one we already had problem with the idea of human rights and the idea of freedom of opinion and freedom of life of people, because that's the point. Because you know, when I went in Kazakhstan, and I was very, very, I look at that image of the video because I recognize the place, because I've been there. I'm very involved in that. But also at that time, I was not surprised, because all of you told me about that. But it's different to be there and to understand, for example, that typical media like TV and something like this asked me if I don't believe that was strange or not good that someone speak against his country. I remember very well that question that one journalist asked me, because you understand by that question that the point is very, very strong, because the point is exactly not believing about the possibility to people to have different opinion, to have opinion, to express their opinion, to have freedom. And I believe that the point in that moment is that that situation, like the one in Kazakhstan, but for example, the one in China or in Russia and in many other countries, is not going to be better, because we, the European country, are importing the problems and not exporting the solution. You understand what I mean?
Yes.
So the restriction of freedom is something that is becoming the wave of the world in that moment. We are not, I believe that in 89, we all believed, we all democrats believed that with the finishing of Berlin Wall and everything like that, the freedom spirit will start from west going to east. Now we believe that the unfreedom wind is strongly going from east, from west.
It's fact.
Yes.
It's fact. It's coming especially together with COVID from China, the most totalitarian state.
So that's the situation, and that's the frame. But I believe for that reason, and that's my
you have to protect
word. Yes, inside the Council of Europe, we started, particularly in the socialist group, we succeeded to have 4 meetings by distance in that period. We succeeded to work a bit also by distance. We really want to meet again by presence, and we already brought some documents very important about human rights and pandemic situation. So we all believe that there is that problem. And so I believe Council of Europe could be a place we already are managing about that, also with open dialogue. Because if we will have the October presence meeting, in that meeting, we had to have a session and a situation and some moments to speak with other parliamentarians about that general situation about pandemic rules on human rights. So I believe we can speak about Kazakhstan more stronger because we can let all my colleagues parliamentarians understand that that problem that we have strongly in Kazakhstan, if we let that go, it
affects everyone
in our country, in every one of our countries. So I strongly believe that the defense of human rights is something you can have only all around the world. If you try to preserve human rights in one country, you will lose the world of human rights.
Exactly.
So I believe we can do that. I believe we can let the voice of civil society and people be stronger and stronger because we need that. And last things I want to say you, because you know that, Ludmila, and you know I believe that.
Oops, Roberto, you disappeared. Technician, can you help us? Roberto disappeared for the moment.
Yes, he lost his connection apparently in these very final words.
Yes, we need a little bit to wait. I hope he will come back. So maybe I will rephrase.
Okay, that's us. See you guys.
Роберто, he's not with us. Окей. Для тех, кто слушает сейчас нас на русском языке, я использую это время для того, чтобы сказать о том, что депутаты предлагают более, скажем так... so... Roberto, you come back. Perfect. Please. The most important words were dropped.
Yes,
you have to continue.
Because Bota, Dana, Aigul, and every one of them, we know that we need their voices because we know that we need to understand better that Kazakhstan is a really great country with great people, with great civil society. So I really believe that the end of that totalitarian situation in Kazakhstan is something that will happen in few of months, in few of years, but it will happen because I've been in many countries, and not in every country you have such a strong civil society, such a strong girls, women, and men, but many women,
many women,
really strong that will really change the situation of their country. So we just have to give them the chance, to give them the possibility to be stronger. And we want to do that because I really believe in few months or in few years, Kazakhstan could be a very important country in the democratic world because of their position, geographic and strategic position, and because that geographic and strategic position could be something that only give power to few of old men that try to take the power only for them. So I'm sure about that.
Thank you very much, Roberto. Thank you all my colleagues, Human Defender from Kazakhstan. On this very positive note, I propose to close our webinar. It's our first webinar dedicated to human rights situation during pandemic time in Kazakhstan. And let's keep in touch. Let's check and fix every single fact of violation of human rights and fight for transparency for better future in your country. And afterwards, we will do short also information in Russian for those who were listening for us for this 1.5 hour almost. Thank you once again, Roberto.
Thank you very much, Roberto. Bye.
Bye.
Thanks.
Так, дорогие мои, я предлагаю сейчас кратко рассказать на русском, о чем же мы говорили, о чем мы проинформировали депутатов Европейского парламента и Парламентской ассамблеи Совета Европы и о чем мы договорились. Может быть, Дана, с тебя начнем кратенько, да, то есть главные пункты, о чем ты говорила, какие случаи и какие выводы ты хотела бы передать и проинформировать гражданское общество Казахстана, что было сказано депутатам. И каждый из вас тоже, хорошо? И, Бота, ты можешь, в принципе, закончить тем, чтобы сказать тоже о рекомендациях, о реакции депутатов ПАСЕ и Европейского парламента. Бота, ты первая. Ой, Дана, ты первая.
Да, спасибо большое. Людмила, меня слышно, меня видно?
Слышно и видно, отлично.
Ага. Ну, в первую очередь мы говорили, конечно же, о ситуации с коронавирусом в Казахстане, о том, что сейчас полноценную веду борьбу с инфекцией, с коронавирусом ведут все-таки у нас не врачи, а Комитет национальной безопасности и правоохранительные органы, преследуя врачей, преследуя гражданских активистов. Что я имею в виду? Что Казахстан сейчас прибегают к цензуре информации, распространению инфекции и проблемах в борьбе с ней. То есть мы рассказали о том, что в Казахстане, в некоторых городах, допустим, вот самый первый случай, это в январе, 29-30 января, в Актубе и в Алматы преследовались фармацевты, преследовались врачи за то, что рассказывали людям о том, что они могут подвергнуться непонятному на тот момент заболеванию. То есть тогда о коронавирусе мало знали, мало говорили. Также о том, что сейчас у нас на передовой, получается, врачи, да, мы это понимаем, на передовой у нас врачи, которым обещали какие-то надбавки в зарплате, но они, мало того, что ничего не получают, также они умирают очень часто. Среди количества умерших людей у нас огромное количество тех, кто умер именно от коронавируса, и это врачи, потому что они на передовой. И самое важное – это то, что им не было никаких надбавок, никакой помощи. Единственное, что им дали, да, это как в случае в Мангистау, это какое-то прокисшее молоко, и, в принципе, больше ничего. И после этого еще эти врачи записали видео о том, что вот у нас никакой поддержки, их еще за это преследовали, их преследовали и хотели судить по статье за донесение ложной информации. О том, что наши СМИ врут, о том, что якобы коронавирус пришел в страну, прибыл из Германии. Хотя на самом деле, да, то есть, мы сами понимаем, откуда он пришел, и то, что наши власти элементарно просто не могут проводить лечение, они не могут обучать граждан, как себя действительно вести, нет никаких медикаментозных препаратов, медицинских аппаратур, которые бы предотвратили смертность такую высокую. Также в целом вот весь наш разговор строился на этом, о том, что у нас в стране, в принципе, никакого лечения, никакой превентивной защиты людей, пациентов и тем более врачей нету.
Отлично, огромное спасибо. Тогда я хотела бы передать сейчас слово Айгуль. Самые важные твои месседжи, которые ты хотела донести депутатам Европейского парламента, дела, о которых ты упоминала.
Спасибо, Людмила. Да, я говорила о репрессивных действиях властей Казахстана с начала пандемии коронавируса. В Казахстане для правозащитников и гражданского общества пандемия коронавируса началась с января 2020 года, когда власти Казахстана начали преследовать докторов, врачей, которые говорили о случаях коронавируса. Их власти начали их преследовать, затыкать им рты, угрожать, преследовать уголовно. О чем я еще сказала? Так, вот репрессивные действия правительства Казахстана привели к еще большему количеству инфекций. То есть их действия наших властей были и являются абсолютно
контрпродуктивными, да?
Да, противоположный эффект. Они вместо того, чтобы бороться с распространением коронавируса, они еще больше подвергают жизни и здоровью граждан Казахстана к еще большему риску. Также я говорила о убийствах 3 активистов. То, что вот, сами знаете, да, это политические убийства Дулата Агадила, Аманбеке Мирханова и Серика Уразова. Вкратце я объяснила, вкратце ознакомила с их случаями убийства, политического убийства. Также я рассказала об преследовании гражданских активистов, то есть сторонников оппозиционного мирного движения Куши-Партиса. Да, что в данный момент более 177 тысяч гражданских активистов, так скажем, забыла слово. В общем, то, что они подвержены риску уголовного преследования. Так.
Окей, и теперь перейдем к Боте. Бота, ты говорила о том, как были использованы денежные средства из бюджета Казахстана, и вот если бы ты могла более подробно, и гуманитарной помощи, которую Казахстан получил, если бы ты тоже могла об этом рассказать, и о чем говорили депутаты.
We lost Bota as well.
Oh, we lost Bota.
Okay. Yeah, her connection fell. Sorry.
Окей. Тогда вот сейчас пока что я расскажу о выступлении одного из депутатов Европейского парламента, конкретно Брандо Бенифея. Он говорил о том, что сейчас тот момент, когда такие страны, как Казахстан, которые, с одной стороны, являются очень важны геополитически, с другой стороны, систематически нарушают права человека, должны более слышать конкретные рекомендации, быть больше под наблюдением, выполняют ли они свои международные обязательства, и что Европейский Союз имеет все механизмы, и Европейский парламент будет делать все для того, чтобы действительно следить за выполнением международных обязательств. И сегодня это особенно важно, потому что пандемия коронавируса показала, что у нее нет границ, и сегодня в тот же момент в Европейском Союзе в Брюсселе проходит саммит, где решается о том, каким будет выглядеть бюджет для борьбы с последствиями пандемии в Европейском Союзе, и потому, как себя будет вести в том числе казахстанское правительство, насколько они будут выполнять рекомендации и взятые на себя международные обязательства, будет определена в будущем политика в отношении Казахстана. И, конечно же, депутаты и Рампи, и Брандо Бенифей, они сказали, что будет поддерживать гражданское общество Казахстана, что это очень сильное гражданское общество, и в основном у гражданского общества женское лицо, что тоже видно в том числе в нашем вебинаре. И помимо того, что голос гражданского общества должен быть слышен и поддержан, они оба верят в то, что в один день, в ближайшие месяцы, а может быть, в ближайшие годы Казахстан все-таки присоединится к пулу, к сообществу демократических стран и будет действительно следовать международным обязательствам именно благодаря активности гражданского общества Казахстана. А они со своей стороны постараются предоставить возможность гражданскому обществу Казахстана быть услышанными и поддержанными. Поэтому Со своей стороны мы месседжи, все, которые могли собрать за последние месяцы, начиная с января 2020 года, о ситуации и с больницами, и с преследованиями политическими, и с преследованиями пациентов, коррупцией, абсолютно абсурдными решениями властей о сокращении общественного транспорта, проблемами с лекарством. Все эти темы были обсуждены и рассказаны депутатам Европейского парламента. Эта запись также останется в интернете для того, чтобы можно было просмотреть, прослушать и проинформировать других политиков, дипломатов, экспертов и журналистов. Бота еще к нам не присоединилась? Я хотела бы понять. Похоже, что еще нет, не присоединилась.
We have her connection back, but no video, so I think her connection is not stable enough.
Окей, тогда я сейчас попробую рассказать коротко главные, месседжи боты. Девочки, если я вдруг что-то забуду важное, вы, пожалуйста, мне напомните. Один из главных месседжей был, что Казахстан это богатая очень страна на самом деле. Только, например, в городе Жанай добыча нефти в 3 раза больше, чем в Дубае. И при этом в самом городе Жанай у нас исключительно только 10 ИВЛ, да, то есть самых важных инструментов для того, чтобы спасти жизнь человека. И когда Европейский Союз выделяет 3 миллиона евро, и Казахстан благодарит, мы должны всегда держать в голове, что на самом деле резервы государственные в Казахстане 90 миллиардов долларов США. И фактически это 3 годовых бюджета Казахстана. Поэтому помощь со стороны Европейского Союза, других стран в Казахстану именно вот в денежном виде, она в некоторой степени абсурдна. И у общества возник огромный вопрос, куда были использованы деньги, выделенные из бюджета страны, а это было... Вот это ты с нами?
По-моему, да. Вы меня видите?
Нет, мы тебя не видим. Но мы тебя слышим.
Что-то я выпадаю в другой портал.
Вот, ты с нами. Ура! Я как раз-таки только рассказала, я не знаю, ты слышала или не слышала, что я рассказывала?
Я ничего не слышала.
Значит так, я рассказала про то, что говорили депутаты, и рассказала чуть-чуть о том, что у Казахстана очень большие золотовалютные резервы, 90 миллиардов, 3 годовых бюджета, Жанай, что 3 раза больше добывает, чем Дубай, и что не должно быть недостатка с ЭВЛ, и что помощь Евросоюза на этом фоне всегда должна быть, каждый должен помнить, что 3 миллиона вместе с теми золотовалютными резервами, которые есть у Казахстана, выглядит немножко абсурдно, что не денежная эта помощь должна быть на самом деле, и что Казахстан не нуждается в этих деньгах. И вот сейчас я оставляю тебе, чтобы ты закончила свою презентацию, свои месседжи, чтобы гражданское общество Казахстана знало, о чем ты проинформировал депутатов.
Да, и спасибо большое, Люда, что поддержала меня в момент
исчезновения технологического, да.
Я очень хотела именно объяснить депутатам это, и вообще, я надеюсь, западной аудитории, которая, я надеюсь, нас слушала, о том, что как нужно понимать, что Казахстан нужно всегда рассматривать в этом контексте, что всем экономическим показателям Казахстан не является бедной страной, которой нужно участие в таких программах, как вот на днях была объявлена EU, когда на всю Центральную Азию, значительный Казахстан, был выдан пакет на 2 года для помощи борьбы с коронавирусом в сумме 3 миллионов евро, в то время, когда существующий режим увеличивает бюджет КНБ на сумму более 116 миллионов евро, да. Понятно, что вот, когда она упоминала, и Айгуль хорошо продемонстрировали, это у нас битву с коронавирусом ведет Карим Масимов во главе КНБ и все правоохранительные органы. Вот. Но я как бы уже, думаю, наш вебинар немножко затянулся, поэтому я хочу сказать вкратце. нам было очень важно донести, что вот когда сейчас Казахстан будет очень тяжело выходить из этого кризиса. И нам предстоит другой кризис, нам предстоит тяжелый, серьезный, длинный экономический кризис. И мы очень боимся, как общество, как представители гражданского общества, что в этот момент мы, в принципе, никого не будет, чтобы помочь. Вернее, казахстанские власти будут считать, что никого нет, чтобы им помочь, но здесь всегда будут рядом китайцы с их дешевыми займами, чтобы, так называемо, спасти казахстанскую экономику. И это очень важно, чтобы западные страны, западные демократии понимали это, что мы сейчас не просим какой-то финансовой помощи от гражданского общества, мы именно просим политической поддержки. И сейчас хороший момент для европейских стран, европейских институтов быть именно настойчивыми и поддержать гражданское общество, продемонстрировать, что именно западные демократии хотят бороться с нарушителями прав человека и с теми, кто участвует в коррупции, кто именно разворовывает экономику нашей страны. И, конечно же, мы, как всегда, мы это, в принципе, всегда адресуем нашим западным партнерам, то, что любая экономическая поддержка Казахстану, любые экономические контракты с Казахстаном всегда должны быть с условием о том, что Казахстан выполняет свои обязательства, международные обязательства в отношении прав человека. И мы очень надеемся донести это до Запада. Мы надеемся, что посольство нас слушает. Мы надеемся, что какие-то представители западных институций нас слушают. И уже мы, как гражданское общество, должны противостоять той пропаганде, которая сейчас Казахстан устраивает на Западе, представляя нашу страну как самый успешный пример для всех, как бороться с коронавирусом. Потому что борьба с коронавирусом является позором, никаким не успехом.
Спасибо огромное, Бота. Спасибо огромное всем участницам нашего сегодняшнего вебинара и участникам, депутатам Европейского парламента Брандо Бенифей и депутатам Парламентской Ассамблеи Совета Европы Роберто Рампи. Всем огромное спасибо. Объявляю наш вебинар закрытым. И до следующих встреч.
Спасибо вам всем.
Всем пока.
Пока-пока.